Okay, we're going to begin with question number 17 on exam review 3. You're being asked to find the inverse. First thing I did was I traded out this g of x for a y, because when you find inverse, you're going to swap the x with the y. So my new equation will be x equals negative 3 over y plus 1. And now what you want to do is you want to isolate this y right here. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll get through it. First thing we want to do is bring the 1 over to the left-hand side, join it with the x. Okay. At this point, what you might want to do, you got to get that y out of the denominator. So you can actually do a little bit of cross multiplication. That will do it. And when you do, you're going to have to work through this temporarily, joining those together. It's not the ideal situation, but we've got to get that out of the denominator. And now what I can do is I can divide by x minus 1 on both sides, and I will have completed the task or the mission here, which was to solve for the new y. Now what I want to do to distinguish this as the inverse function, I'm going to use the g, bring it back to this notation here. G inverse is equal to negative 3 over x minus 1. And again, folks, on this part right here, cross multiplying, when you have a proportion, cross products are equal. So that's why I could form this right here. Okay, let's take a look at another one of these. Again, what I did was I traded out the h of x for y. And now swap places. This one's not going to be quite so hard, because all we have to do is to bring this 4/3 over to the left-hand side. I'm going to do that by multiplying it by its reciprocal. The reciprocal of 4/3 is 3/4, and what I do to one side, I'm going to do to the other. And what this does is it causes these to cancel, leaving y by itself, and we're left with 3/4 x is equal to y. And once again, we want to make sure that we understand that this is the inverse. So the notation that I will use is h inverse is equal to 3/4 x, and that's how you would write that. Moving on to question 19. This one's almost like question number 20. It's almost identical. So again, let's just swap out the g of x for the y and do the little swap. X is equal to negative 3 over y plus 2. And now I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. X minus 2 is equal to negative 3 over y. Let me just show you maybe another way you can do this. You can just take the, again, the golden rule says whatever you do to one side, if you do to the other, you're going to have an equivalent equation. So what if I just flip this over, and I have 1 over x minus 2 is equal to y over negative 3. So I just did a little bit of acrobats there. And now if I multiply this by a negative 3 and this by a negative 3, these will cancel, and I have my y there. So y will equal negative 3 times 1 is negative 3 over x minus 2. And again, we're going to swap out that y for the inverse notation. G inverse is equal to negative 3 over x minus 2. So that's just a different way of doing it. You can choose which way you prefer. Let's move on to question number 20. Question number 20, once again, you're asked to find the inverse. So let's go ahead and change this out. Negative 2 minus 1/5 x. And let's do a little swap, because that's what an inverse is. Minus 1/5 y. And keep in mind, this y is not in the denominator of that fraction. Again, what we're going to do is isolate that y. So we're going to start by adding the 2 to the left. It cancels it out on the right. And I'm left with negative 1/5 y. Some people get confused on this part. Really, what you need to do to get rid of this negative 1/5 is take its reciprocal. That's the easiest way to do it. So the reciprocal of negative 1 over 5 is negative 5 over 1. And the golden rule says what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. But you have to be real careful on this one because you're multiplying the whole thing. So as a result of this, these will all cancel out, and you have your y isolated, and you can distribute this if you'd like to. Your answer will be negative 5x minus 10 is equal to y. And once again, this is the inverse. So we want to write it as the inverse. G inverse x is equal to negative 5x minus 10. Or once again, you could have left it in factored form. And we're going to move on to question number 21. In question number 21, we are asked to find the composition of these functions. These are these nested functions inside of each other. And I'm color coding this a little bit on this problem so you can see it. The first thing I want to do is go up to the purple function and replace the x with a 6 and evaluate that. So since there's a negative there, that's going to be a negative 6 minus 2, and when you evaluate that, you get a negative 8. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come along here, and I'm going to make that substitution. I just found out that the equivalent value of g of 6 is negative 8. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to the h function, and I'm going to plug in a negative 8. So it's going to be negative 8 plus 2. Which equals negative 6. And negative 6 is your answer. And now finally, let's do question number 22. And it's pretty much the same. I'm going to first of all evaluate f of 0. So f of 0, if I take out the x, plug in 0, I'm going to get 0. So that's going to be 0 minus 2, or negative 2. I'm going to come down to this now and make a replacement. F of 0 we just found out was negative 2. And now I'm going to go to the g function and take out the x, and I'm going to plug in a negative 2, and I'm going to subtract 2. And that's going to give me a negative 4. So your answer is negative 4. And that concludes this video.